Hey there, we're live. Welcome to the Expo live stream. We're talking about Router v6, and we've got router developers extraordinaire, Evan and Hassan, on the line. How's it going, guys?
Going pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah, likewise. Pretty good.
We'll let folks roll into the chat here, get formally started in a couple minutes. We've started having some Expo meetups in various locations. Last month, we had one at Seattle. And we were wondering in the chat, tell us where the next Expo live stream should be. Or you can just tell us where you're calling in from, which I assume would be like if there was a Venn diagram of those two things, it would be a full circle. I, of course, am gunning hard for Cleveland, Ohio, USA to be the next Expo meetup. We have just, crazy, huge Expo community. We got people. There's people. They're in the woodwork. There's a guy in my co-working space. I'm calling it from there. He works on an Expo app. And years ago, I met him at a Cocoa Heads meetup. So he was doing native iOS, and he went over to React Native and then added Expo. So it's happening. We've got Colombia, India, great locations. We've got some coverage. Sweden, we have local Expo people on the ground in Sweden. We could have the meetup there. What do you guys think? Where should the next meetup be? I know what Evan's going to answer.
Bangalore, India.
We could. I mean, actually, I don't think we put it up yet, but I think we are looking to have one in the Bay Area pretty soon. But there's time between now and then. Like there could be another one. Brazil.
Yeah. Let's get the Bangalore, India thread going in the chat.
Heck yeah.
We can make it happen, guys. We also have Nigeria. Let's get that Nigerian train going.
Nice. There's actually a pretty good Expo meetup kind of kicking off in Ghana. Been hearing a lot about that. So we get a lot of folks from the African continent on the office hours, which office hours are also right after this because I accidentally scheduled a live stream and office hours in the same week. So if you want an extra hour of me, just me that time, unless Son and Evan want to join for some reason, come on and check out office hours in Discord in a couple hours. We'll get started here in just a moment. Speaking of the chat, of course, our question was, where should the next Expo meetup be? But also, if you have any Expo router questions, start firing those in there, and we will make sure to pepper those throughout the demonstration. We'll be talking about Expo Router v6 here in just a second. And we had last week's live stream about STK54. At least half the questions in the chat were about Expo Router. So we're expecting lots of questions about Expo Router. People are really digging that liquid glass, those native tabs, all sorts of things. All right, I think we're ready to get started. The chat is hopping. Welcome formally to the Expo live stream, Expo Router v6 edition. We've got Evan and Hassan, Expo Router developers extraordinaire, here to tell us all about Router v6. How's it going, guys?
Yep, going pretty good.
Still going good.
Excited to be here. Excited to talk about all the incredible things that we've been cooking up with Expo Router v6. This is one of our most exciting releases yet. We're doing a bit of a new round. So like between versions 1 and 4, it was really focused on like getting the primitives in there, the foundation of Router. And now with 5, 6, 7, we're just going to focus really hard on getting all of the native primitives built in, because there's a finite number of native primitives. That's going to be like your native tabs, your stack, your modals, your sheets, and then things like split view controller. We get all those in, and that solves all of the that gives you like so much of the heavy lifting for making your app look and feel very native. So grind on that, and then simultaneously, we've also just been doing a ton of work to improve data fetching. we find is that there's so many problems where it'll be like, oh, how do you do, you know, like authentication when I set up, how do I flow my data through here? And on the surface, it seems really simple. Like we could add more views, we could add more navigation, but the reality is if we want a smooth, seamless experience, then we kind of need this full stack solution where we cover both how data loads and then how you present the data, and of course how you deploy the app and get it running and prototyping and all that. So covering a wide gambit, but we've grown the team out a bunch and lots to cover today. So very, very excited.
Awesome. Yeah, and for speaking of just like that look and feel, if you go to expo.dev/blog, scroll just down the page, you'll see the Expo Router v6 introduction. I was when I was trying to summarize the Expo Router v6 features, I was often going off of the footnote in the SDK notes, and I realized like technically everything is there, but when you actually see it in the full blog, you get all these beautiful screenshots of the new native UI features. And of course, some notes about the API route features as well. So I really recommend checking out that blog. Lots of good videos in there. It'll give you a really good feel even before you hit a new project or stick it in your existing project, what you're going to see. And I think it's really cool. So yeah, you know, I think I can't think of anywhere better to go than to just start showing the stuff. Now that we're talking about, you know, we've told, now let's show. So yeah, Evan's going to be demoing the UI features first here. And reminder, if you've got questions about Expo Router or anything of that nature, stick them in the chat. We will be, I love interrupting Evan and Hassan and everyone else in the live stream with questions as they come up. So give us some good ones.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, let me just share my screen here real quick. Let's see what people are saying. React native navigation. Visibility. Yeah, okay, lots of good stuff. All right, share my screen here. Sorry, just working on a bunch of things in parallel today. Got everything running. Okay, perfect. So like Keith was saying, we've got a bunch of fantastic things going on here in the blog post. Great post, lots of visuals. I just love this form factor of video, some information about it, and then code block. And so, you know, hopefully we can just keep the good times coming. A few things that really excite me. And actually, before I jump into that, I just want to give like just a huge shout out to like the team that's worked on this. So like Jakob, who can't be here right now because he's out on vacation, worked really hard. You know, made this come true, and the software management team, because this builds on top of React Native Screens and React Navigation. So there's just like a lot of incredible tools here, and we're really like trying to pull them together and give you these beautiful APIs. But it's not possible without just lots of collaboration across the gamut.
He deserves a vacation after his work on this release, getting that done.
Yeah, and especially the software management, like the React Native Screens team, just doing incredible work. So yeah, just kicking it off, we have the peek and pop stuff. This is something I've wanted in Expo for a very, very long time. Almost no other cross-platform framework. I can't think of any other cross-platform. We've got to move this off of YouTube, man. The previews be like a bunch of different stuff about Cyberpunk if I was signed in. But like, this is something I wanted for a very long time, this ability to just, because it's sort of like a shared element transition, what you're getting here. When you long press, but you're also getting more information. And it's something that really makes a native app just like feel so different to a website. Because on a website here, we have the ability to like right click and get link preview, but they're never, it's just like not as thoughtful. Like if I right click copy, it's not going to have like, copy and pull over to OpenAI or something. It'll just have whatever's built in. A native app, that's totally different. You have to think about every little interaction that goes into, this limited real estate that you have here. So we were able to build this into this really nice API with link. So, one thing that we hear a lot is that people have, just like some fatigues, like dependency fatigue, where there's too many dependencies, you have to install things, rebuild them. So what we wanted to do was give you this rich functionality, but not require some extra learning, some extra, dependency, a new install, a new build. So we just put it right into the link component. So you can do, instead of any of your links, link.trigger to target which component you want to trigger the action. Then you have the preview, which is optional. That gives you this pop-up window of the next view controller, which is pretty sweet. You can also add custom children to this if you want a custom like child for the preview. And then you have some menu items. And this is our first exploration in adding context menus. It's first of many because context menus are just so fantastic. So yeah, playing with some of these ideas. This is iOS only for right now. We might be able to do some web version of at least the context menu in the future, but just want to get the primitives in here. So we can actually try this pretty easily if you, it's just in the default template, but one template that I have right now that I really like is you do bunx create expo-e with HTML, and that's going to give you this like HTML template that I have running over here. So this is also using our Expo HTML elements, which if you're not familiar with, this kind of gives you sort of the ability to do like p and div, and it will like convert those behind the scenes to like text and view. But if you combine that with just CSS support and like React Native CSS, then you have something which feels very familiar and is just very powerful for doing light mode, dark mode, web, native, the works. Anyway, so I've got this example here. If we open this up on our simulator, this is what it looks like. And we have an item right in here. We can long press and we get our context menu, and we have our preview right here. So there's a little trick that you can do. I don't know if this is kind of undefined behavior, so it might go away. But here I just want the context menus. I don't want them to go anywhere. So what I do is I can say just href to the current URL that we're on. And then what that gives me is the ability for these to not go anywhere when you click on them, but you can still long press to get the context menu, which is nice if you just want to add, some long press somewhere. And then of course you can also come in here to the pressable, and you can just set like a custom action on it. So like, let's say alert hello. And so now if we click on it, we're still not navigating anywhere. We have a button, but then we can long press to get this. So it's a little bit of a hack. Like we will add a better context menu solution in the future. This is just a nice way to drop our toes in because context menus are very complicated and just very expressive. But this does give you that ability today in Expo Go to do some of that like long press, short press stuff. So let's see, what else do we have here? We've got our link, we've got our trigger. The border radius you set here will create the border radius around the item. So if we set this to like 0, what we'll notice is sometimes, it might be too hard to show up on the stream, but you will have a little bit of an edge from the iOS like UI kit that shows up there. So you can set the border radius to just match that correctly and get that smooth transition. It's really just like, when you start to get into stuff like this, that's where we're really stressing the details. Because again, this is like, it requires native, it requires view controllers, it requires the connection between the two of them. There's never been a framework that has this ability built into it outside of just iOS itself. So
that little border radius right there, that's handling where it like kind of just like expands a little bit, but it matches
right,
boundary.
that little extra around the item.
Cool.
And we're trying, so what we do is we try to like sniff the style. It's a terrible word, but we intercept the style off of the parent and then use that for the wrapping. So down here we also have, let's see, there's no preview for this window. What we can do is go to /modal. And so when there's no preview, then we just look at the giant item that we have right in here. But we can come in here and do link.preview. And now this should show us a bit of a preview. Let's see, let's close this. Got a lot of touch actions on it now. Yeah, so now it kind of turns into this preview. It's a bad version to preview because it's a transparent modal, but it will swap the card out for whatever that preview item is. So this is really fantastic if you want to do something like Twitter or X, where you long press a video and then it just starts playing like the full video. We could just come in here and we can say like text, hello, and just kind of build out, let's do P, I guess I didn't import text. And that should change it to just the word hello right over there. So you can build this into like whatever custom preview you want. For now, we'll just leave it empty and we'll do the context menu items, which we have the ability to do SF icons in. And then we have like some options here. And what's beautiful about this is it's just recursive. So you can take a link menu and put it inside of another link menu, and then you get a nested link just like that. It's beautiful. I'll kind of took a lot of time on that. Previews is really one of my favorite parts of this new release because it's pretty stable and it's in a great spot. But let's see. Another thing that you can do here is we have these new liquid glass menus. Let's pull this out. So what this is this is just a standard route. It's /modal right here. But then inside of our layout where we define it, we say use presentation form sheet. And then we also we say if is liquid glass available, then set the background color to transparent. What that does is it gives us this liquid glass look, which is kind of shrunk in. It's very rubbery and just this really nice little modal for interacting with content. We're going to do a lot more with sheets. We started working on them and we just realized there was so much more we wanted to do with them. So we moved some of that work over into 55. But here we can set our detents. So we can set this one to like 1. And what you'll see there is that we have the small one, but when it scales up to the big one, then it goes fully opaque and you have this nice kind of progressive blur at the top and all these items. So a lot of just really powerful primitives to work with here to build expressive UIs.
Is that thing that makes it go from transparent to solid? That's just like a built-in thing to iOS.
That's just built-in behavior, yeah. It's kind of hidden. It's hidden on iOS too. So if we hide this, like the default background color is not transparent. So if we were to open that, you see it will be just opaque. So a little pro tip there of, like I said, as we build out more of the modal stuff, this will be more obvious and will just increase your possible success.
What's the part that makes it go solid then when it's full screen?
It's just how high up it is on the route. So there's actually a view in there. I don't want to show it because it's in a different project I'm working on. But I did in an app I'm working on, I wanted that to be liquid glass all the way. So you can, with private APIs, go into React Native Screens and then recursively search up for the shadow view and then set that to transparent. It's kind of pseudo private API because you're not actually accessing any API. You're just crawling up the view tree and then setting a view. But it is technically possible to get this to be transparent all the way up, but it's not like publicly exposed right now.
Yeah,
so this
I was
is
thinking
like
it was actually like a cool
iOS
effect that it was like kind of progressing. Like when you progress from like, it's kind of like, half the screen is hidden, I'm transparent, and I'm like more obvious and emphasized as I go full screen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful effect. Yeah. And again, this is just built right into Expo. So we're really excited about that. And then this is, of course, like a scroll view. So it's naturally handling the scroll. And then it should, there's no keyboard in here, but it should like interact really nicely with the keyboard too. So anyways, yeah, that's
too from like dealing with that as a separate component that's not integrated into the navigation. Like it's pretty difficult to get sizing right on those separate detents. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that a bit more in the upcoming release as well. It's kind of a spoiler, but one thing we're playing with is just a standalone modal component in Expo Router. So if you don't want to like wire up a route, which generally what we find is that you do end up wanting to wire it up to a route, but on the way there, as you're just hacking away and building stuff, you might want to just pull it in really quickly, try a few things, and then move it into your navigation system. But then it also can give you other things like access to information about when it's closing so that you can do things with the keyboard and so on. So a lot of good stuff in the works. But the killer feature, the main one, is the native tabs down here. It's been, I don't know how long native tabs have been in UIKit, maybe like 10, 15 years, but we finally have them here in Expo via React Native Screens. Again, huge shout out to the team for that. So we got this now, so you get this beautiful liquid glass effect. You have things like this search role right over here, and you can start typing. And in order to get this search role, what you can do there is actually show you real quickly. So this is, by the way, just as an aside, this is the ideal structure for an Expo Router app currently with tabs. It is tabs on the top, and then groups, and then stacks for each individual item inside of the tab. It is not the other way around with stack and then tabs. We are going to, as we
you heard it here first.
Yeah, as we build out, it's a little bit more complicated, but as we build out things like with split view controller, this will be more obvious because there's only like 3 or 4 things that really just work everywhere and responsively across all platforms. And it's tabs at the root and split view at the root. But we'll get into that more in the future. So here in our layout, we have our native tabs, which we can import from Expo Router native tabs. And then we also, the thing in here is we can swap this to dark mode. And you'll notice that the colors are changing from dark to light very quickly. This is something unique with liquid glass that Apple does, where you know, generally what we do is we set up our app, we say, okay, when it's light mode, we do this, when it's dark mode, we do that. But with liquid glass, Apple is switching component by component over from light to dark mode based on the background of that item. And so there's no callback for that. There's no like hook where you can say, okay, is light for this component, switch it. It's just not exposed. We might get that in the future, but it's just not there yet. So the way that you can set this up is you can use platform colors. So let's see, where do we have some platform color usage? I think like here, we've set the tint color with AC System Cyan. So this is a library I built called Bacon's Apple Colors, just because I've grown wary of using the platform colors library from React Native. So like if you pull in platform color from React Native, what you can do is you can access Apple's dynamic colors, which automatically define a light mode and a dark mode. So they also have one which is just iOS only. It's dynamic color iOS. So we can come in here and we can say dynamic color light, and we can say blue. And for dark, we can say red, right? And so now what we'll see is you see it's switching between blue and red kind of crazily, like the text and the thing are switching differently. So this is how we declare what the colors should be and how it will switch. So it's kind of new for the React Native community. If you want just the iOS built-in colors, which I find look really great, you can use this library Apple Colors, and this has fallbacks for Android and web. We have some CSS work in flight, which will make this just built in and global, but that's not quite ready to talk about yet. So if we do, oh, how am I doing on time, by the way?
Oh yeah, you're doing fine.
Okay, great.
Maybe like 5 minutes.
Okay, sweet. So here with our tint color, we can set this to AC label. And actually you have this nice hover here where you can see what the color is. So black and white. And we can also do like secondary label, and you can see that. Apple even goes as far as like when you have something like cyan, there's a slightly lighter and darker like cyan color. So that gives you the ability to just switch things up nicely. So you see it gets a little bit brighter. Anyway, so that's the colors. There's a lot that's like different here, new, and a lot to cover. One thing that's always a tell, I find, with apps is if they aren't using the native Apple icons. So here we kind of leaned into the system where we say the SF symbols and the Android drawables kind of come first, and the ability to use a custom icon is secondary. With AI tools, this becomes a lot easier to work with, but we are going to just figure out ways to make this much cleaner, where you get the proper native icon for each platform. And then if you have like a custom brand and a whole team, like you're a big company, you still have the ability to, choose. It's kind of funny that way, where it's like the cross-platform thing is more for larger companies, and the getting that right native feel just really sets you apart. So what we can do here is if you want to use a vector icon, you can pull in the icon, set source, and then define this custom vector icon, which you can set the font type and then the name inside of it. So here we have email, but we can switch that over to like link, and we do have some custom icons that aren't the Apple ones. And then for the search tab over here, what we have is this new triggers system. So unlike the other navigators, which are more like screen, and they magically pull in everything, and then you can like loosely associate the options. With triggers, this gives you the fine-grained ability to control what gets rendered and what doesn't. So by deleting a trigger, we effectively get rid of the search screen. And I think we can even open the search screen, we can delete that, and then you notice it kind of errors out and goes away. That's actually not expected behavior, but whatever, we'll figure that one out. I think that's just because of the search bar was open. But anyways, so here what we can do is on our triggers, we can define different native roles. So these are, again, native. They aren't very cross-platform because Android doesn't have like a full equivalent. And then on web, we just have to build something. But you do have a role. We just exposed all of them. So you have like recents. And then that will give you like the recents icon. You can open that up. You know, the main one that's really different is the search icon, because that's going to split these up, move these other tabs over here, which looks fantastic, and then give you this search, which expands into this proper native search. And then it shows whichever tab you were on last as this preview tab. And that is bonkers. This is such great like native content that you get for free. In order to actually get the search bar to show up, you need to have a nested stack inside of it. And then you just set the header search bar options as an object that you set up here. If we remove that, and then we just kind of close out of the app and reload it, some of these native features are a little bit harder to reconcile with Apple or like at the Apple platforms. Let's reload this a little bit. Let's see if we can get that. Actually, I might. So the header search bar options is in here, but I set it twice. So I also set it up here with this use search hook. So we can just copy that out, and then that should give us the, let's see if we can get that to not show up. So now we don't have search. So this is just the default behavior. If you just set the role, is you'll just have the object and you'll have this. Now, what this can be used for is, a lot of people have requested this, the ability to make the search button not a search button at all, but to make it like some other action button. Now, the Apple Human Interface Guidelines specifically say do not use tabs for actions, but some people still use it for that. Like, you should use it for navigating to a different route, but it can be nice if you have like a branded icon here. That is a feature that's coming. It's in React Native Screens now. We just need to expose it through Expo Router, and that would just be the ability to change the icon to something else. If I had more time, I could probably do it live here on screen. And then you could make this like a rocket ship, and it'll just be like the rocket tab.
Nice.
But
so that's
now,
that you search that's how you get the search query, so you could actually like render the search results inside that tab, right? Like, what's
so all
that?
this is doing, this is just in the user space. So we're just pulling in use navigation, and then we're setting the navigation options. This is a little helper hook that I use. We are trying to think through like what we want for search, because it might make sense to have like a search bar component, and then the search bar component could be like a controlled input, and you could have like the value and then like set value, or you could have a ref and set ref. So we're still playing with that. Again, like, this is a whole new era of Expo Router. I mean, maybe it's like the previous era was like, let's make file-based routing exist, and let's just make the best universal file-based framework ever made. And we did pretty well on that. I'd say we've done better than ever before. And this next era that we're going into is just pure native, pure beauty, honoring the platform. And so there's going to be a lot of new APIs like this, and a lot of things are going to be in flux for a little bit about like, native tabs, until we find like, what's that right combination of, by default, you're getting the most with the least lines of code and the least inputs. And then you can peel back the layers and drop down to like native SF icons or full search compatibility. So yeah, we'll have things like modal and search bar, lots of APIs in the works that we're thinking about. This is a very exciting space right now.
Yeah, definitely appreciate your feedback as y'all start using this. I'm thinking back now to, historically, often the navigation Chrome and the inside of your view have been these things that have been like pretty separate. And, early pieces of Expo Router, just like say like sticking like a screen, stack screen config inside the route itself, allowed you to access that a little bit easier. But I think back to like coping mechanisms I had, like rolling my own custom header bar, things like that, just to make these things more in sync. And it looks like we're going to have some really good APIs for doing these things where we typically did not cross the boundaries.
Like you don't need to do native everywhere. In certain areas, it really works. And I think DOM components help show this, where it's like, you just get so much of that perfect native feel if you get the navigation right. And so that's going to be like the header buttons, which we're going to do a whole study on header buttons here in the future, and the search Chrome, and like the tab buttons. And if you get all of those right, then in here, like, this is literally HTML and Tailwind that is converted to native styles. But like, you can basically get the best of both worlds if we get this API right, and then we get kind of the styling to work correctly as well. Because then all you have to really think about is just like, what content do you want to render, and how does it scroll, and how is it responsive? Nice. Which we do some pretty reasonable work with in here. Also, one thing that I love about this demo, it's an aside. If you hit this search button, this button up top, then it will open the new launch.expo.dev. Nice. And you can just send this app to the store from within the app itself. So app deployment inception, which is it's so bonkers that you can just deploy apps from your phone now. But I digress. So yeah, we have the search bar options in here. We're just setting header shown true, and we're setting the search right like this. Another thing we can do in here is we have the, I was just playing with the other day. Yeah, the placement. So there is a few different placements you have, like integrated button placement for search. So if we pop in here, this might require a bit of a reload. Let's see, maybe it's not I think that only works if you have like one button. Oh no, that only works if you don't have a search tab. So what integrated button does is if you just have this, but no, just the stack, but no tabs, you'll just see like a floating search button at the bottom. We can also do stacked, which is more like that classic search bar that we had from before. So let's see, it's a little wonky and busted when you have tabs. And this is again, we are exposing just raw UI kit. So it's just a little busted on the Apple side, and we are figuring out how to like massage it and make it work right. But if you don't have tabs, then that will just put the search up here at the top underneath the stack button. So you have a couple different options and things to play with. They don't all mesh and work well. If you've seen the iOS 26.1 beta, you can see that there's still lots of changes to Liquid Glass happening. So, you're not behind by using this stuff. Things are just simply changing all the time. Nice. So let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, some things I really love about the native search that you get for free. Things that I absolutely adore. Right off the bat, when you scroll to the bottom, you don't have to worry about the inset of this item. It will automatically scroll and add extra inset for you. And it fixes the scroll bar. So before, you used to have to like plug in everywhere you had scrolling to account for this bottom bar. No more. That's just automatic when you use Expo's unstable native tabs, which will be native tabs in the future. You have the ability to scroll to the top automatically when you tap that. This is default in Swift UI, but it's not default behavior in UIKit. So we took that from Swift UI and we pulled it into UIKit, and then we added it to Router so that you get that excellent system. So this is something that people still, if you're like in between UIKit and Swift UI, which a lot of people are, you would still have to build it in manually, but you're getting it for free from Expo Router because we just see that that's the direction things are going in. And again, that was like a hard hook that you had to add everywhere, and it was painful. And now you just get it automatically. It will find the nearest scroll bar and give that to you. So that's pretty sweet as well. And then if you're on like iOS 18 or older versions, this will be an opaque bar. Once you get to the bottom, it will just simply. In fact, we could just try that here. Let's see. Let's open an older device. So we've got iPhone 16, 18.1. So here I just did Shift-I and Expo Go. I'll hit yes. It's actually bonkers that we can just open it this quickly. And so now it's going to install Expo Go. We don't need to do any custom native build. And we'll get it right inside of here. All right, so here you see we have the older, not liquid glass style. You see now it's a blurry tab bar automatically. And when we scroll to the bottom, it goes translucent for us by default. That's pretty fantastic. And we get that on the top here with the header too. So you see it's translucent, we scroll and we get the blur. So by default, with no extra work, you don't need to pull an Expo blur, you don't need to do any reanimated safe area checks, any craziness you don't have to pull in. So that's one of these things where just the harder we go, the less you'll have to do and the more you get for free. And so we're really excited.
So it accounts for that little like extra space at the bottom automatically. Like I've added like stupid little spacers over and over to screens.
Right.
Things like that.
Exactly. So one thing that's kind of annoying is React Native kind of predates the safe area inset. Like it predates iPhone X and iPhone 10 or whatever. And so when they added scroll view, they took there was like a scroll view prop which adds this automatic inset, and they just disabled it to keep things working. And so that was kind of a bummer. You had to turn that on all the time. So here in this body scrolling, we have the props set here, and they're very long prop names, and they're kind of annoying. So what we do now, and this is some genius work from the React Native Screens team, is you don't need to set these anymore. When the native tab is set, it will automatically look up the nearest scroll view, similar to what Apple is doing, and then it will set those props for you by default. So you don't have the breaking change. And here you see we set it automatically. So we can actually, I think we could potentially turn it off. let's see, if we turn that off, maybe that will work. Maybe it won't work. No, I think it's just like forced on, which is the default Apple behavior here. I think there was like a little bit of a hack here where if it's set to automatic, you can turn it off, fast refresh, and it breaks. Okay, so this is the default behavior that we had with React Native or React Navigation and React Native Stack forever, where it's like broken at the top and the stuff doesn't work, and then it's broken at the bottom. And so you would always have to go in and update that every single time. And it was just, it just, you know, made us, you're like, okay, well, I guess I won't think about these extra beautiful insets and these underflows and these blurs. So by default now, we automatically set it. You don't even need to know about this. I didn't even have to waste time talking about it. There's just so many little details that went into this so that you can just get these beautiful interactions for free. And then it works very nicely across all platforms.
And since the native tabs are Android compatible too, I honestly forget the Android behavior. Does it flow under or does it just stop on each side? I assume it does it automatically.
Android is basically going through their iPhone X period right now with edge-to-edge stuff. So there's going to be some similar growing pains there as well. We have some temporary hacks that we're doing internally to give you that similar behavior where we inject it on the scroll view. And then we'll just continue to like monitor the situation as that builds out. But yeah, like this default Chrome behavior, like the driving principle behind this is, can we get you to a point where you just have some scrolling content in your route, and then you just think about what data to load and how to fill it. And we will handle all this Chrome for you. And you can specify like how you want your buttons to look and what you want your title to be, and we'll figure out the way to make it the most native. Of course, you can always come into here, and if you want to make everything yourself, you still have access to like, you know, JS stack, and you can still use a slot, and you can build everything like manually yourself. So you have all of the ability to, you know, build everything custom if you want, but we want to give you like, we just want you to be successful by default. And that's what you're getting here.
And that might allude to a question that's come up a few times in the chat is, well, number one, there are a number of things that are compatible with Android in this release related to native UI, but you know, the question about why there is a focus on certain things in iOS, I think it boils down to, we can do these things in iOS. So I guess if you could clarify, like what is
absolutely
what is compatible on both, and like what's the reasoning behind the focus there?
Right. Yeah. So my Android emulator is in a weird space right now. I'm just working on a secret new project for ReactConf, which you should tune into and watch. So that's why I'm not pulling up that. But we pulled in the native tabs on Android, and that gives, so the focus on iOS is just because Liquid Glass is huge. Like this is a massive change. It's not like this happens every year. This is like once every like 10 years or something. It's been
like, if there's a big massive Android UI upgrade, we're probably going to put some focus on that in the future SDK release.
Yes, and we are. So we have a PR open on Expo Router right now. Jakob opened it, and it focuses on Material U colors. So like a big feature of Material U that's really defining is less about the Chrome, and it's more about the color scheme. Because a user can basically say, okay, I want my app, I want everything to be like girly pop and pretty. So I'm going to set purple as like my default color scheme. And we support this a little bit with monochrome icons in Android, but we're going to give you like color tokens as well. So when we look at like these Apple colors here with like AC, this is just like exposing that, but for iOS. So we're saying like, here's what the native iOS colors are, and you can use fallbacks on every platform. We're going to give you the opposite version of that, so the Android version, where it's like, here's the default Android colors, and then here's some fallbacks for other platforms. And then you can, and as you can probably see where this is going, and then we will give you a third layer on top of that, which is probably what most people will use, which will be like kind of the Expo sort of shad CN type color scheme, where it's like, all right, I just want to say label. And then if it's on iOS, use Apple's color scheme for label. And if it's on Android, use the Material U color scheme for label. So the key here is we're just going to give you the native primitives. We'll give you fallbacks. And then in the future, we will give you this like cross-platform system when the kind of smoke settles. Because again, all this is brand new. You don't need to use any of this. This is only if you really care deeply about getting that beautiful native feel. And then on the router team, we are going to try and make this the default and try to get you this for free. But it's all optional right now. Like we marked it as unstable, yada, yada, yada. But yes, there is some great Android stuff coming. And there was some great stuff for Android in 54. So like one of my absolute favorites is React Compiler, which the Meta team has just been grinding on extremely hard. It's the most impressive thing I've seen Meta release for React since I've been working in the space. And that they built that for the Quest store, the Meta Quest store, which is like a low-end Android device. I mean, it's not low-end, it's a good Android, but it's like, it's very constrained, resource constrained. It's running on your face and it's doing this crazy stuff. And that's all built in React Native. So they built React Compiler to optimize, Android applications. And Expo is the first React framework. So like, if you think about any React web framework, like Remix, Next, all those, Expo is the first React framework that has enabled React Compiler by default in our new template. And we are seeing incredible performance gains on Android. So that is a huge, huge win there. So even though there wasn't like some massive change from the Google side, we were still able to pull out something which I think is fantastic. Because you're just getting those wins for free, which is baller.
Nice.
Let's see. Yeah,
let's hit a few more questions.
Just a few more, and then I think we can switch over to Hassan here.
I don't know what this component is, but it sounds interesting. Tab view bottom accessory?
Yeah, so we have the tab view bottom accessory in the works. There's a PR open for it right now. The problem is React Native is missing like one synchronous layout feature. And so like it's constantly resizing. It's very similar to this like light and dark thing that we spoke about earlier, where things are automatically changing. And so like we basically need to update React Native, and that's going to be in the next version of React Native, and then we will enable the accessory. So that's like the mini music player that shows up. And then when you swipe down, it like, collapses and stuff. Some of that's already in here. So like we do have on our options here, there's like so many fun options to explore and dig into, by the way. I highly recommend, if anyone's just like a nerd about this stuff like I am, just run through the options and take a gander. So we have the minimize behavior, which is part of that, which is like on scroll down. You can have, and so once there's that, like currently it just does nothing. But once you have like the mini player, then you unscroll down, it will like shrink. So a lot of good stuff coming.
Cool. One more question here. I have a feeling you have some UI advice for Bradley here.
Okay, sorry, let me just switch over.
I was using touchable as passy with router.navigate for 99% of my navigation with Expo Router. Should I swap to link then? Didn't know existed before 6.
Should have switched to link. Yeah, you should definitely use link whenever possible. It's just the most powerful primitive for navigating. The main thing to consider with link is that by default, it's a text element, and you can make it into a view-based element. So the difference there is like display block versus display flex. And display block will like, wrap views kind of weird. So what you can do is you can wrap your touchable opacity with link and then use the as child prop to forward all of the props down to that touchable. So you can base it, it's a very cool mechanism. A lot of this actually, it comes from Radix, which is this fantastic library. That's what powers like ShadCN. And so we were like, what if we just pulled all of those ideas into React Native? Part of that, React Native was just kind of going off and like doing random stuff, like 50 options instead of composables. So yeah, you can, I'd highly recommend using link and then just as child to forward the props down.
Awesome.
Probably not the worst idea to switch to pressable as well instead of touchable opacity. Gives you a bit more control.
Yeah, I like using I just have a touchable bounce component that I use everywhere because I prefer the bounce. Like I only like opacity for like text elements. Like if you touch a link, it just reduces. But any like card or view, I want it to like shrink or scale or something when I touch on it.
Nice. Cool. So yeah, that was a great overview of the native front-end improvements with Expo Router v6. You might be shocked to know after seeing all that, there's also a backend API set of massive improvements. And Hassan is here to demonstrate those for us today.
Yeah.
And while he's getting set up, maybe I'll throw in one more front-end question. Victor was asking, thanks for new version Expo Router. Is there any way to have a big background image still with native header buttons and native large header style?
A big background? Yeah, so you can set all of the cards colors to transparent. I do this a lot actually, where I'll set it all to transparent, and then I'll have a view behind the stack, and I'll usually have like some Skia animation, which is like some crazy thing that plays with the liquid glass. So you can do whatever you want like that.
Cool.
Really quickly, just one other question I see here about advantages of Expo Router over React Navigation. One very concrete advantage that you're getting here, well, first is that we have the native tabs. And the other is this peek and pop, this like context menu link preview system. That is an Expo Router exclusive feature. Basically, everything that I just listed is us like building upon. So like the first section of Router was like, all right, let's see how much we can do with React Navigation. And this new section is like, let's just go all out and build everything. We won't be limited by any of the underlying tools, and we'll deliver everything there is. So I'd highly recommend using Expo Router for all of your navigation. And just, it's going to start bleeding more into the styling and the view system. And as Hassan is about to show us, the data fetching. Take it away, Hassan.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So to show off some of the server work that we've done, I built a really simple Pokemon Pokédex app. So we've got the first 20 Pokemon. If you click on them, we get our beautiful new modals showing up, giving us the Pokemon stats. In terms of how the app is built itself, it's I've got the layout route open here. It's using React Query to do all the data fetching right now. And we've got two screens in our stack. One is the index, which is this, and then the other one is the detail view, which shows the modal. So while the website works, it looks okay, it seems to be okay, but if we look in the network tab and I refresh it and go to the right thing, we'll notice that we're doing quite a lot of requests here. Now, again, I have decent internet. This isn't a problem right now, but you could easily see this being on a phone or using 4G. Some of these requests might be slow, some might fail. And the reason we have to do these requests right now, unfortunately, is because of the way this Pokemon API works is sort of limiting. It only gives us a couple of properties, and then we have to specifically request more properties for each Pokemon. So this is a little bit annoying, and one of the cool features in Expo Router that we have is API routes, and I wanted to show how we could use them to make this situation a little bit better and try and get all the data in one fell swoop. I've created some API routes here. Before I go, I'll just quickly show you how the React Query side of it works. There's a very straightforward standard React Query call here. We talk to the API, we get the JSON, and then we pass it along to our list to render. So to move this to an API route, I've created one here, and you can see that I basically make a call, get the JSON for the list, and then for each list item, we fetch the individual URL, we sort of merge it back in, and we return a response. And if we get rid of the host name there, and I refresh the page, I don't know why Chrome is doing this for me. But yeah, we go to preview. Now we can see that API request is returning all of the data that we want in one go, in one request. So we can tidy up all of these. If I go to my Pokemon card component, this was also doing a data fetch to load the data for the images and the types. We can, if I just change all occurrences, props, and we can, because we're fetching the data on the top layer now, we can also get rid of all of this loading guff. Don't need it. It's all happening in one place, and we can manage all of that in the top level index file. So if I go and refresh it real quick, there we go. We don't have any extra requests. We're just doing it in one shot And of course, the data object is quite big here, but one of the advantages of us now controlling what the data, how we're fetching the data and how we're passing it along to our front end is we could trim pretty much every property here that we don't need. Like the vast majority of these aren't useful for this app as it is today, other than, you know, the stats and the image. So
It's a
API,
lot, but it's nothing that couldn't fit on a Game Boy cartridge. So
absolutely right. But yeah, this API wraps are super cool just because you can move a lot of your data fetching to a route within your app. This API wraps, you know, you can deploy them to EA's hosting. There's self-host. You can deploy it to your own hosting. You get a huge amount of control over how you want the data to be passed along to your front end app. On top of that, you can. Some people might have, you know, secrets or API keys in their front end to talk to these different APIs. This particular API in question doesn't have one, but there are plenty of APIs that, you know, require an API key. Using the same mechanisms for it with API routes, you can move those calls down to an API route and have all the secrets, you know, securely hidden away. So nothing is in your front end that needs to be other than, you know, any authentication mechanism you have to talk to your API. So that's API routes in a nutshell.
it's a good demonstration of why you
Yeah.
might want to use them, even if you already have your own API. A lot of us front end developers used to do all this munging on the front end, but it would still be the same number of requests. Now you can do a lot of improvements right in the same project.
Just to prove it to anyone who might be watching, this is definitely hitting the API route. Just so you know, there's no tricks here. And yeah, what you said about a lot of people, like a lot of us have munged data in the front end. You know, this has definitely been a thing in, you know, projects I've worked on as well. Some of you may have heard of like the BFF pattern, back end for front end. You know, API routes are basically, I would say, your quickest path to getting to that. If you're looking for like, how do we implement a BFF, and I've got an Expo app, use API routes. They're amazing, and you know, it doesn't take long at all. It's certainly, you know, not complicated code or anything. It's just JavaScript. You can do fetches. You know, everything works.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, we've had such a focus on local first over the years with Expo. It's even like our OTA updates. We download them in the background. We ensure that you never really see that network request, because that just makes for this killer app experience. And like the next step up past that is, you know, at some point you will need network requests, but it doesn't mean you need like to just switch over into this, everything is online, and it's just, you know, watching the waterfall of nonsense come in. So now, like with this, you know, we can just reduce, move all of that over to the API route, and Expo Router, like this can all deploy to EAS hosting. We deploy on workers, so these run at the edge, so they're very close to where you actually physically are. And then we batch them all up. So if you're in a place where you have like low network conditions, which a lot of mobile users are, and I mean, all desktop users are, because they don't have cellular chips. But like, you know, a lot of mobile users are often in places. And then it's like, if you think about having to do 50 network requests, now you can kick that off to the edge where that has no, you know, network issues, and you're just doing one network request. So this really like stretches local first to its absolute, like it brings that philosophy to the server in lots of ways. I think is incredible.
Yeah, agreed. It's like I said, having worked on apps in the past where, you know, there were these horrible waterfalls, it's freeing to be able to just, you know, in one file define an API route, do all the data munging there, and keep the front end sort of clean. Like we don't have to do any of that there. All right, moving on from API routes. Next thing on my list is middleware. So we've added this recently for Expo Router v6. Very excited to show you what it's about. You need to get started with middleware. You need a couple of things. You need to make sure web.output is set to server, because of the way middleware works. For people who don't know what middleware is, it's a way of running some logic before a request is handled. So this will let you, the things it lets you do, for example, are like you could send logs for every request that comes in. You could inspect a request that's coming in and, you know, accept or deny it based on some criteria that you've defined. And so we'll get into some functionality in a second, but just so you know how to set it up, web.output server, and then in your Expo Router config, you need to put this flag in there. It's all in the documentation, so if you don't catch it now, it should be fine. So we'll go to middleware. I've got a basic middleware set up for us to use for the moment. It's just going to log the method and URL for any incoming requests. And if I go to my terminal, you'll see here that, I mean, I can reload it and we're getting logs out for the routes that that are being hit by the browser. In this case, it's this route and the network, the API route, this one. So by default, you know, logging, pretty simple. You know, you could ship these logs out somewhere else. That's totally possible. But let's make this a little bit more interesting and say maybe if a request doesn't have an authorization header, then we return a response saying not authorized. I'll save that. And if I go here, pretty much instantly we get the 401 because we aren't sending a header here at all. So while this is cool, it probably would be nicer if our front end was the one that, well, our front end showed, and then perhaps our API requests were the ones that had a 401 unauthorized. So we could show something a little bit more useful to our users, like a nicer error or something like that. And to do that, we have a feature called feature called matches, which is available through unstable settings. And you have two properties in here, methods and patterns. So methods map to your HTTP methods, and patterns can be strings, which match the path that the incoming request is going to be from, or it can be a regular expression. I used regular expression here because it covers both of these endpoints. But yeah, you can use either together. You can use as many as you want. All of these patterns, both of these pattern styles work. So if I go back after saving this and I refresh my page, now you can see that the page is loaded and React Query is retrying the request. And when it finally failed on the fourth go, we got some prettier UI to show that something went wrong. And, you know, we can make this work really quickly by just whacking any old thing in here. It doesn't really matter. And there we go. All of our data is still loading. In a real scenario, you probably would want, you know, your JWT or something like that would be passed as part of the request, and in the middleware itself, you would pass and verify the JWT. Some other little things of note: because middleware runs on every request, anything that you don't want it to be slow, basically, otherwise it will slow your website down. And this is why we also have the matcher here. So you have fine-grained control over which paths and which methods your middleware is running on in the first place. So I think, you know, it gives you a good measure of control over it. You can define as many methods as you need here, but you do need to be aware of, you know, what you've set here and make sure you test it thoroughly and try and keep the processing time of whatever logic is happening in here down.
Yeah, we avoided adding this for a while for this exact reason. Like, it's easy to make your app slow and then just be like, why is my app just with middleware? but middleware is still so powerful. Like you can see where this is going. We're like, Expo solutions and tips and tricks and integration for like authorization, authentication, payments, rate limiting, just all the things you need to make an app real and more than just like a prototype. And shared, universal, all of this bundles with all the same like language features as your app. So incredible work here, Hassan.
Like for the use of like security, you could have done this before on each route, but this allows you in one small piece of code to lock down your API by default and then open it up based on the user context.
Absolutely. I mean, with HTML routes, it probably would have been a bit more of a slightly annoying, I guess, because you have to do the client side load. But this gives you control over every route, whether it's an API route or HTML. In my example here, I just used our API routes, but you could totally ban people from even accessing the HTML route if you wanted to for whatever reason.
Popping in here real quick with a question. Now brownfield, we were having a little dialogue in the side here. By brownfield, they meant like an existing app. What are the requirements for using API routes in your Expo app?
Well, you don't need to deploy your Expo Router iOS and Android app to the store to use the server features here. So you can just make a project, add some API code, and then deploy it to wherever you want to deploy it to. EAS hosting is obviously the best choice. And then that will, it's just a network request. So then if you have like a brownfield app that makes network requests, it can call into these API routes. It can use this middleware, can use the public folder, all those features.
And of course, it can mix and match with API route calls to API routes and calls to your existing API that it's using.
Yeah. Got a really silly question here. Do the API routes execute in the background? We get this one a lot. It's ridiculous. These do not execute on device at all. They execute in the server. The client cannot ever have access to the server code. Otherwise, the server code would be insecure. So the whole purpose of this is that they run on a different computer such that an attacker cannot access the secret information, the private information, which actually does bring us to something which is really, really nice about what I love here is so many of these features in the past, if you were building like a Swift app, you would have put these somewhere inside of your client app just because it was like maybe 10x easier than spinning up a server. And by doing that, it means all that logic then goes through, like all these things that you just don't have access, you don't have control over it. So anything that could be, an attack vector somewhere where someone might be able to abuse your servers, you maybe like put out some free service and now it's just you blew up online and you're getting spammed. You can just push new versions of your server instantly and it will like synchronize up with your application. So that's fantastic. Like you have more ownership and more fine-grained instant control over the code that drives your product. And all that only works if it runs on a server and not locally on your device.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else to know, again, with middleware, I didn't mention it, but yeah, you have, because this is running in a server context, you have access to your process.env environment variables. So, anything that you were doing in an API route, like Keith said, if you were individually checking authentication in each single API route, you can do that in the middleware in one place now.
Right. So that's not just like the Expo public ones. You can have any environment variable, including secrets. So if you're building like an AI chat app, which every single person in probably the world is building right now, you drop your open API key right in there, your OpenAI API key right in there, and do everything securely. You would not be one of the many apps that are having their OpenAI keys leaked because they put it right inside of their native binary and shipped it to the store in plain text. So, yeah.
We have a series of videos on our YouTube channel as well of Beto implementing a finer grained version of the BFF pattern, BFF for OAuth authentication, where you actually say you're using like Google Auth, instead of trying to use it directly in your app and having to deal with the fact that you can't put your auth secret in there and you have to do these extra security measures. You can wrap it in an API route and then actually just use your API route kind of as a proxy for that authentication. And you can put the secret in there and you can implement like the kind of flow you would implement on a web app and it's a lot easier to work with. You can use Expo Auth Session pretty much as is for any authentication provider, even ones that don't typically support it if you're just trying to go directly from client to that provider.
Awesome. All right, I will try and quickly get through the next couple of things. So the next thing I wanted to show off was redirects and rewrites. So again, this is more from a server perspective. Redirect, some of you may be familiar with by having done it in client side, where you use like the redirect component, redirect, and you give it a href. So this is obviously a client side piece of functionality, but we support that on the server side as well. Just to quickly show you as an example, so say I have this path, doesn't exist right now, it's a 404, but what I would like is for it to point to this. It could be many reasons, could be SEO, maybe in the future I want to move all of the content here to directory and have this page as a landing page. What we can do is we go to our app config and declare a redirect, and redirects are objects with a source and a destination. And I just need to go and restart my server. And if I go back to this page, there we go. We've been redirected to the index page. And this all happened server side. There was no client thing. I can pop open the dev tools to show you directory. And we go there, we'll see there's a 302 HTTP status code, and that had a location here, which is the page that I asked for, the root index.
Nice. Yeah, you used to have to do this with API routes. You would just create an API route that does this. Now it's just a couple lines of JSON, super easy.
Yeah, I mean, you could do this in middleware as well. You know, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, but this is more of a sort of easier way, so you can keep your middleware function as targeted to whatever functionality that specifically needs. Aside from this, you can also, if you like, send people to external URLs too, if you so desire. Quickly go.
And just to be clear, you don't need to clear the metro cache each time you do this. That's only used for transform stuff. We could probably get this to work without clearing the cache too. We should take a look at that.
Yeah. But yeah, so if, in case anybody missed it, I went to there, I typed in credits, which is the new redirect I created, hit enter, got sent to an external URL. So people, you might want to use this for Discord, you know, yourwebsite.com/Discord, and then it sends you out to the Discord link, all sorts of handy use cases for redirects. Rewrites.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I use that all the time for like when I make an app and I want to have like an easy test flight link. I'll just publish my app /test flight, and then I can send it out to people.
Exactly.
Make your own Expo project for your own custom URL shortener.
Yeah.
So next one is rewrites. So rewrites are kind of a sibling concept to redirects, except rewrites will take the source URL and they will get the content of the destination URL, but the URL will stay the same. So with redirects, what happens is we start here and we get sent here when we open it in the browser. With rewrites, that doesn't happen. It actually shows the content from the path, but behaves as if it was its own URL. Now, I created that. I showed you when I set up the API route earlier. And what I'd like to do is get rid of this v2. I don't want to expose it to my users or if anybody's sat there sniffing traffic. So I just want it to be API/Pokemon. So in my app JSON, I've got a rewrite here, source which is the incoming URL /API/Pokemon, and I want it to be sent to the destination, which is the actual API route. So just go here and refresh. Oh no, I need to restart the server. Sorry. Oh well, it already loaded up, but yeah, we'll just see. So there you go, HTTP API Pokemon, no v2 in there. Obviously, I could have changed this to anything I liked, but yeah, this is another really quick way of maybe tidying up URLs that have too many parameters using, I guess you could call them vanity paths, like or shortened paths. There's a lot of flexibility in here. It's if you've used, like, I guess Vercel or Netlify, I think they have similar things in there, and so this should be quite familiar to anybody who's needed a rewrite. It's also used for SEO things as well, like improving URLs, making them a bit more human readable. But yeah, so that's rewrites. What have we got? Last but not least, streaming. So just wanted to show off, I guess, what how text encoder and text decoder streams work.
Everybody building that AI chat app, pay attention.
Right. So yeah, we added all of what he's about to show you because we are just dedicated to helping people build the best possible AI apps as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. Streaming is very hard to do on native devices traditionally, and so this next part is pretty exciting.
Cool. So yeah, how do we do streaming? Well, we have API routes, and we start off with creating a readable stream. Because this is a Pokemon app. This is similar to what we were doing in the other API route. We fetch the list of Pokemon, and instead of mapping over the results and sort of returning everything in one big batch, what we're doing here now is we fetch each individual Pokemon's data. We create, you can call it a chunk, effectively, a small piece of data that we're going to put on the queue. And then we use the controller object to enqueue the chunk, which basically means put it on the stream. I've added a little delay here so we can see in the front end as they load in. And finally, at the end, you close it. The front end aspect of it, because we're using React Query, there's a bit of boilerplate where you need to create a stream generator. And inside that, we have a text decoder stream with where we get a reader from it, and we read from it. If the stream is empty, we exit the loop. Otherwise, we continue processing it and parse our Pokemon items out of it. Bit more boilerplate for React Query. We're using their experimental streamed query function here, but the rest of it is fairly standard React Query stuff. So if I pop over to my page, you can see they're all
Let's go.
Got to collect them all.
So this is just one network request.
This is just one network request.
Great. Oh man, this is awesome. So to get this to work, we had to add like tons of, well, not tons, but we had to add like a lot of browser built-ins and features to the native runtime that match across server and client. I mean, this is fantastic.
Yeah, super powerful. And yeah, I mean, if you have like heavy processing stuff, you can use streams for that, as well as any sort of AI LLM based work. It's not specifically for AI LLMs, but there's so many use cases that you could be using them for. And again, fully supported by Expo Router, API routes. You can send streams down, you can have your apps read them and populate data within the app from them. Everything works. It works really well.
Yeah, this is so fire. And now with Expo SDK 54, I think there was like 3 or 4 polyfills you needed to set up before you could use things like AI SDK. And now those all go away. You just set up like the fetch origin. I think you still polyfill streaming fetch because we have like Expo Fetch, which has streaming built in, and then there's React Native Fetch, and we're working on making just Expo Fetch the default version. But like text encoder, decoder stream, even I think I saw async iterator symbol. Like these are all features that we've had to add to Expo in order to support streaming. Yeah, so like symbol.async iterator is not in React Native. We had to like add that as well.
I love you can do this with like standard web patterns and then like use like something we might use anywhere like React Query and consume it the same way. Very intuitive.
Yeah, it's really great to be able to use, you know, the same concepts from web all the way up to your native mobile. It's super powerful. And, you know, I guess for those of us who've been working with React Native long enough, you know, even things like form data used to be incredibly painful. And nowadays, you know, all of these things just behave and feel the same way they do on web.
Yeah,
and we're still working on improving it too, right? Like there's more improvements down the line, more cool things yet to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder if you can give any, and we have a couple questions in the chat about things up next, questions about server-driven UI, things like that. What if you can give us a taste of the future?
Yeah, let me just stop sharing my screen. So yeah, server-driven UI. I mean, we have RSC support. So you know, if you haven't taken that for a whirl, please do. We're always open to feedback and you know, interested to hear from our users how well these sorts of things work for them. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think RSC is kind of the future, and I would love to live in that future as soon as possible. But you know, I recognize, you know, there are lots of code bases out there, and you know, potentially some use cases where it might not be the best fit for some users or some apps. So you know, I'd say you should always try and see how far you get and see what problems you run into, and then let us know, because we want to know about these things and try and improve the framework and Expo Router such that, you know, it works for everyone in the best way possible.
Yeah. One thing I think about here a lot is like Expo is by default, and it has always been a server-driven UI framework, like from the get-go. I'll give you an example of this. If you build an app in development, you run it on your phone, and then you close your computer, you go to like a party and you show someone you built, it'll be like, can't connect to the server, like unable to connect. That's because there is a server that is driving all of the UI. And with Expo updates, what we do is we give you that ability to continue doing that in production. So React Native just kind of turns all of the server-driven stuff off and then embeds it in your app for production. Updates still gives you that, but the problem is it's just this one opaque chunk, this giant binary that you have to work with. And so one step in that direction is server components, where we say you should have the control at the component level when and how your components are refetched and when they circle back to the server, instead of just saying update the whole app whenever the phone is backgrounded. And so, you know, in doing that, what we saw was that there was just a number of other little networking issues that we wanted to fix first and circle back on to like build out that foundation. So I'll give you a great example. We have server-driven component, like server-driven UI, and we have React server components, but you still had like no control over any of like the stuff that middleware just unlocked for you. So now middleware will give you the ability to control the authorization before a UI component is rendered and sent back down to you. So imagine that, like in the future, you can basically say like, here, I have this full dashboard section of my native app. And then if an unauthorized user deep links into it or tries to render those components, mount them, then they will, you know, get to the middleware, then they'll have an error, and then an error boundary will display what that fallback is. So it gives you like all the functionality of the browser, but in this composable, truly native world, which is fantastic. So we're still building towards it actively. Everything here is building in that direction. We're just like increasing and improving the foundation. And then there's of course the other element, which is like EAS hosting and giving you like the full like server control element, making sure everything's fast, runs on at the edge, and then it has all the compatibility to run all the code that you're used to. So lots of great work going towards this.
Awesome. That's so exciting. Yeah. I mean, there's been a ton of, just for me personally, even talking about it day to day, a lot of today I learned moments just in the course of this hour plus. So yeah, that was great. Thanks everyone in the chat for your great questions. Thanks Evan and Hassan for some awesome demos. We've got a couple of events that will be coming up that will be making some appearances at. Check out ReactConf, October 7th to 8th. There should be a live stream for that. So you should see some talks live there, even if you're not there in person in Henderson, Nevada, I think that's where it's at. And also React Native London conference coming up on November 15th. You can still get tickets for that. We'll have a number of Expo folks there. So come talk to us there. Any parting thoughts, guys? Thanks for a great demo.
Not at all. Thanks for the questions. Really, really interested one. Andreas's question about regulated fintech. I mean, I'd love to hear more use cases personally. This kind of stuff is always super exciting, and obviously hearing people use the work that we put out, it's a really great feeling. Try out the stuff we've shown off. If you find any problems, reach out to us on GitHub and Discord. We're listening, and we want to make it better for you as well.
Yeah. I'd end with this. There's so much incredible stuff here between like all the UI things and all the server and data fetching things. As you can tell, like I put out a tweet a couple months ago saying that we were hiring, building out the team. Hassan is one of those engineers that we hired, and he's immediately like hit the ground running, built all this incredible stuff. So I'm just super, super grateful for the team. And Hassan is an engineer he was just doing fantastic work building Expo apps when we found him. So I'm incredibly grateful for the Expo Router team that be working on this over at South Mansion, React Native Screens. You can just see that the collaboration is off the charts. And like, it was like 2 or 3 months, we were able to churn out just tons of functionality. We didn't even cover like most of this. And this is just the Expo Router part, not even the larger Expo SDK or EAS side where we shaved like 10 minutes off of builds. So incredible space. I'm incredibly grateful to work in it. If you guys are like, interested in working in the space, working with us, feel free to reach out. We love talking with you. Reach out to Hassan if you're using any of these API routes or data fetching features. Let him know like how you're using it. There's just so much for us to think about all the time. So it's extremely helpful if you share those thoughts with us so that we can plan around that. Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.